I recently was invited to Cambridge University in the UK and spent 2 weeks partly there, partly at Oxford, and then partly at a variety of remarkable places in the UK. And then I came back to North America, and I was asked by a newspaper to contribute an article that was in some manner related to my visit, and so I wrote it, and the newspaper wanted to edit it a lot, and so I found another newspaper that would accept it the way I wrote it, and because I wanted to say what I had to say about it. And I'm going to read it to you because, well, that way you can listen to it and maybe you'll find that useful. It's very unstylish, let's say. Why I Love Great Britain. Of all the twists and turns that my life has taken over the last few years, one of the most truly upsetting and surreal was learning that I had been peremptorily disinvited from one of the UK's great universities. In 2018, when I last traveled to the UK, I met with several Cambridge professors and began to discuss the possibility of arranging a seminar there, focusing on some key biblical texts. A formal offer of a visiting fellowship was proffered to me in February of 2019, facilitated by Dr. Douglas Headley, professor of the philosophy of religion at Clare College, and arranged through the necessary actions on the part of Cambridge and the University of Toronto. In the fall of 2016, I had rented a 500-seat theater, on a whim, you might say, in Toronto, Canada, and delivered 15 90-minute public lectures. Every week, a different lecture, entitled The Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories. Surprisingly, all 15 lectures attracted a sold-out house. Furthermore, the majority of the audience consisted of young men, a notoriously difficult audience to attract to such things. The initial lecture, Introduction to the Idea of God, focused on the first 2 sentences of the book of Genesis. Those who came to watch and listen walked their way with me through the remainder of that great book during the remaining 14. By the close of 2018, when initial arrangements were being made re my fellowship, some 4 million people had watched the first lecture on YouTube, with a multitude more listening on my podcast. The series has now been viewed or watched 40 million times. It has, in addition, attracted widespread positive response from Christian Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox believers alike. Even widespread positive critical response, as well as large swaths of the Orthodox Jewish and Islamic faithful. In a further unexpected twist, the lectures have also proved popular with those who regard themselves as explicitly atheistic. I recount this only to explain why the initial invitation from Cambridge was proffered. It has proved increasingly difficult for those concerned about our traditional and religious heritage to propagate their message, their ideas, to the modern community, and the success of my strange venture generated some great curiosity. After the success of the Genesis venture, I had the ambition to continue my investigations and discussion with the book of Exodus. Knowing that I am an amateur in such matters, being possessed of no training in formal theology, I thought it would be prudent to test my knowledge and understanding in a setting that would challenge what I was assuming and potentially rectify my profound remaining ignorance. I therefore set out with my would-be Cambridge hosts to hear the opinions of those who had made the study of divinity their central calling before I presumed to re-engage upon my lecture series. It was a great honor for me, and I say this most truly, to be offered this opportunity as a psychologist and an academic interloper. My invitation raised some hackles behind the scenes, however, based on what I would call a willfully blind misinterpretation of my putative political views. In consequence, the invitation was unceremoniously rescinded on an excuse which I later learned had been manufactured after the fact. This happened conveniently, as well as treacherously, when Dr. Headley, my sponsor, was absent conducting his affairs in India. I discovered that I had been cancelled not as a formal notification, but accidentally on Twitter, to say the least. This was a shock. Earlier this year, however, I received an invitation to return. In the aftermath of my cancelling and other two similar incidents, an intense battle had been waged to make the sort of gratuitous forbidding that had been applied to me impossible. A group of Cambridge dons arose to challenge and reword a set of revisions to the university policy on free speech that would have, ironically, if that word is strong enough, made future similar cancellations both easier and more likely. Then they attempted to find 25 people who would affix their names to a petition that forced a full, anonymous, and binding vote on the matter. This specific effort took months. People were afraid to sign, afraid that making their support for such a change public would expose them to sanctions similar in consequence to those that befell me, afraid that they would be mobbed and cancelled. But enough people eventually did so, and the matter was duly brought forward to Regent House, Cambridge's ultimate governing body. And when the vote was called, an unusually large proportion of those eligible to cast their ballots turned out to make their opinions known. Almost 9 out of 10 of the 1,500 or so who voted did so in a manner that made such cancellations impossible in the future. A larger margin of victory than any of the academics I spoke with about such issues of governance could recall. Obviously, something was transpiring of far broader significance than the mere revoking of my individual fellowship offer. And so, to the first of many reasons why I love Great Britain, Cambridge, like Oxford, from which it is descended, much as it dislikes to admit it, has a highly decentralized college structure. Both great institutions are more a loose collection of autonomous colleges, each with their own history, tradition, architecture, peculiarities of self-government, and educational aims. This arrangement allows for maximal liberty and creativity in thought and action at the most vitally important level, the local, while simultaneously enabling an optimal level of cross-college rivalry and cooperation. Furthermore, and most significantly, this free and loose organizational structure makes bureaucratic capture of the entire institutions extremely difficult. This, in turn, makes the rectification of mistakes, which will inevitably be made, possible and even likely. And that might just be the salvation of the rapidly corrupting modern university, as well as everything downstream from that culture. And that is everything. And the rebellion at that august institution and elsewhere against the ideological forces currently threatening free discourse and inquiry in the academy is just beginning. Mark my words. My wife and I returned to Cambridge on November 17th. I attended a number of seminars there, delivered 2 public lectures, as I did a week later at Oxford, where I'd also been invited to meet and speak and teach. I used these opportunities to discuss and test a proposition key to the body of thought I have been developing and communicating about for many decades. That we all perceive the world not as a set of self-evident, objective, material facts, but as a system of meaning. And that we do so by applying a framework which, when described, is a narrative, a story. I proposed further that this fact has profound, even revolutionary implications for how we understand science and technology and for how we conceptualize ourselves existentially in the world. These ideas were markedly well received. I also had the great privilege of talking for several hours while at Oxford, first to Sir Roger Penrose, perhaps the world's most renowned living physicist, and then to Dr. Richard Dawkins, who is rather uniquely a fellow both of the original Royal Society, an honor bestowed upon outstanding scientists, and of the Royal Society of Literature, founded in 1820 by King George to reward literary merit and excite literary talent. Dr. Dawkins is, as well, perhaps the world's most famous and influential atheist. Dr. Penrose and I, along with Dr. Stephen Blackwood, who served as mediator, discussed his fascinating artistic proclivity for geometric tiling, an endeavor related, in my opinion, to the relationship between mapping a territory and the territory itself. I spoke with Dr. Penrose mostly to inquire and learn, as his knowledge roams far afield from mine, and was well rewarded in my efforts, as our conversation literally spanned the micro and macrocosmic realms.